Porsche's taking their sedan from good to great with an exclamation point. I'm Jay, and this is Modern Motoring. Welcome to the 2024 Porsche Panamera. The specific trim we have here is the 4, which is the all-wheel drive variant. And let's get into what's new for 2024. It's gone through a pretty serious overhaul. Doesn't look like it on the outside, but inside it is definitely different. So let's start with what powers it. So it's a 2.9 twin-turbo V6. Horsepower comes in at 348, which is up 23 from 2023's version, and torque comes in at 369 pound-feet, which is up 37 pound-feet from 2023, and it goes through an 8-speed PDK, which I think is one of the best transmissions out there in the modern automotive world. How does this drive? Well, it's a Porsche. Let's start with that. So you know that the ride quality is going to be exceptional. For this specific drive, it's very unassuming. So yes, it's fast, it's quick, it's agile. There's that instant acceleration. The gear changes up and down the 8-speed PDK are lightning quick and so precise. It doesn't feel like it's lightning fast like a lot of the other Porsches. And I think for the Panamera, I think that's okay. It doesn't need to be that for either the Panamera or the Panamera 4. People who want that luxurious Porsche drive with just enough of a spirited drive experience will find that here. You don't get the loud snap, crackles, and pops. You do get more responsiveness as you shuffle through the drive modes, but this is just plain and simple an excellent daily driver. I would absolutely do longer trips with this, whether they're day trips or multi-day trips covering thousands of kilometers. It's such a refined driving experience. A big contributor to that is their standard adaptive air suspension with the new 2-chamber system and the Porsche active suspension management. And the drive quality here is just so... It goes quick. Obviously it goes quick. So if you need that burst, you absolutely have it. But for daily driving, it's so serene, all right? It balances that available power with the just soft enough and just firm enough ride quality, right? It's not being crushed over bumps and imperfections on the road, and it's not soft and squishy. And Porsche's found a really good balance here in the Panamera for 2024 that gives you really the best of everything. It feels like there's 348 horsepower and it feels like there's 369 pound-feet of torque here. And sometimes what you see on paper doesn't always translate to what you feel beneath your right foot, but I can absolutely say this feels exactly as advertised, as spec'd, as indicated by Porsche. And twists and turns, because of the lower center of gravity, they're just done with so much ease. And I've gone on city drives, I've been stuck in traffic, I've gone on highway drives, and I've gone on back road drives. And every situation here that I've put the Panamera in front of, it's done it without any issues at all. Let's move on to the exterior. So same platform, same dimensions, but a couple of things that have been changed for 2024 are the new headlights. There's a new redesigned window line, and there's a new rear light bar. It looks really, really sharp, and it's a very Porsche thing. Well, I guess a very modern Porsche thing. Some of their vehicles do have that long light bar. And there are new front fenders, and if you have looked at it so far in the cutaways and said, that kind of looks like a 911, you're absolutely right. I don't think Porsche needed to make that kind of change on the front fenders, but I'm happy they did, and I'm happy they borrowed from their own engineering designs, because it just adds a little bit of that extra aggressiveness, but without taking away from any of the elegance. There are upgraded headlights here if you choose to tick the option box, and it's such an advanced system that it lets you see around curves, and the light just actually bends, and it's such an advanced system. It's really, really cool. I would spring for that. Of the plethora of options that you can get with any Porsche, not just the Panamera, that is absolutely one that I would get. The biggest changes are on the inside, starting with the layout, and it looks very similar to the Cayenne, and I think a lot of Porsches will go through this iteration of the upgraded interior. So we have a 12.6 instrument cluster and no issues with it at all. Now, yes, I'm familiar with it because I've had the Cayenne, I think, a couple of months ago, and I've driven it prior to that as well. But I like the layout of it, and everything can be seen easily, and you can configure it a couple of different ways. Now, the infotainment system is 10.9 inches, and if you want to have your passenger be occupied and not talk to you, you can opt for the 10.9 inch passenger screen. And I've mentioned this before, so I won't go too deep into it now, but Porsche's smart engineering team has set it up so that as a driver, if I glance to my right, all I see is black on that screen. But if you're the passenger looking at it head on, you get all of the information and the colors and the graphics. So as far as the infotainment system goes, it's responsive, it's quick, it's pretty easy to dig through. Not a lot is buried. On the bottom left, there's a little picture of a car, and that to me gets you to one of the most important things, which is activating or deactivating the auto start stop. Porsche does have one of the better systems where it's not intrusive. It doesn't shake the car. You still notice it, but it's very minimal as far as what you feel. My big complaint is the HVAC system, and yes, there are some physical buttons for it, but to change the direction of the air through the 4 vents up front, you have to click the climate menu button and then on the screen, drag it to specifically where you want it. And the rear passengers have the old school way of just being able to physically change the direction on the vent itself, but I don't like it. And I know the Taycan has it, but there wasn't anything wrong with doing it the other way. Quick touch on the rear seats. The outboard ones are fantastic. They're comfortable, they support you. Not quite as good as the front seats, but for rear seats, it's scores pretty high. There's a little too much piano black for my liking, not the end of the world, but a couple of times it's bounced up and reflected in my sunglasses, so not the greatest, but definitely not a deal breaker. Wrapping up on the inside, I will say the Panamera does have one of the classiest interiors out of the competitors. That includes Audi, BMW, and Mercedes. It's still very minimal, but it's not as stripped down as Volvo, and it's not as overwhelming as what Mercedes has. It's a nice, clean balance. With the redesign, the gear selector is in between the instrument cluster and the infotainment system. It clears up a bunch of space for your wireless charging, your USBs, your cup holders, and for the HVAC system. And I like how it's on an angle and how it's not just flat. I think it gives it a little bit of depth, gives it a little bit of character. Steering wheel, typical Porsche, very comfortable to hang on to. Drive modes are on the bottom right, and your heated steering wheel is on the inside of the bottom spoke. Let's wrap up with pricing and competition. So to get into the Panamera family, you start with the rear-wheel drive option. That runs you $119,700 as an MSRP before anything is added. If you want the Panamera 4, which is what this is, which adds all-wheel drive, that's $124,000. So it adds $4,300. Here's where things get a little interesting. There's the Panamera 4e Hybrid, which gets you 463 horsepower, 479 pound-feet of torque, and you do get the electric component as well as far as the e-hybrid goes. That's only $129,800, so a little under $5,000 of a difference. When you're in this price point and in this class of vehicle, it's hard to argue for the Panamera 4 versus the Panamera 4e Hybrid. Now, I have not driven the e-hybrid. If it's anything like the other hybrids that I've driven from Porsche, it will be absolutely spectacular. I think the Panamera 4 and the e-hybrid are for two completely different buyers, which is odd to say because it's still the Panamera lineup. And I think the Panamera 4, the gasoline version, which is what this is for those who want the Porsche experience. They want the Porsche drive quality and everything that comes with a Porsche, and they don't necessarily value that lightning fast acceleration They may not care for any type of electrification. And not everybody does, and that is completely fine. Those who want more on the performance side and do care about electrification and maybe have a shorter daily commute where they can use up all of the electric range in a day, go home, plug it in, and start with, quote unquote, a full tank / full charge every morning. I think that's who the e-hybrid is geared toward. And it's interesting that there's such a small price difference. Again, $4,800 to be specific for the MSRP really isn't a lot. Wrapping up with a few other competitors, we have the Audi A7 starting at around 100K. There is a new 5 Series from BMW. The gas version starts around 71K, the i5 EV at about 84K, and then there's that monstrous M5 for 135K. There's the new M5 Touring as well, which is the wagon. I think I saw that at 128,000 as a starting MSRP. Completely different animal, though. That may have competed better with the Sport Turismo. And finally, on the Mercedes side, the E53 starts around 96K, and the E63 starts at around 143K. These are all Canadian figures. Yes, most of the competition does start at a lower price point, but there's just something about that Porsche experience, from the responsiveness to the drive feel to just how it feels as a driver on the road for all different types of conditions. I've had Porsches in the middle of winter, and I've had them in the blazing heat of summer, and I've been doing this for 11 years. So the consistency with Porsche and how they engineer their vehicles, to me, justifies the price. That's going to wrap it up for the 2024 Porsche Panamera 4. If you have any questions on the vehicle or what you've seen in the video, let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to get you answers as soon as possible. I invite you to join our social media community. We are on all of the major platforms, except for that one, it's not really a major platform. Anyway, that's a whole separate discussion. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate the support. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.